Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I see some people coming in. Their participant list is going up. So, hi, welcome. I'll wait until the participant number stabilizes a little bit just so I know that the process of getting everybody in is done. And then we'll get going. But in the meantime, welcome, everybody. I know it's Sunday evening for those of us on the East Coast. For those of us on the West Coast, I guess it's Sunday afternoon still, but since it's evening here, I have my cozy cup of chamomile tea that I'll be having as we talk today, and of course some water. So I encourage you, as we get started, make yourself comfy. If you want to get a cup of tea for yourself, or hot chocolate, hot cocoa. I think it's cold pretty much everywhere in the country right now. So warm beverages probably will do the trick for everybody. But thank you so much for joining me today to talk about mental health hacks to get ready for the Mcat and for life. Because honestly, mental health helps us rise to any occasion. And in this case, the Mcat just happens to be the hurdle that we're talking about today. Okay, so it looks like the number of participants has stabilized, so I will officially get started. So hello again. Hi. My name is Julia. I haven't introduced myself yet, but I am one of Blueprint's Mcat tutors, and they asked me to talk to you guys tonight about mental health hacks for the Mcat, because just like you guys, I took the Mcat myself. So I vividly remember how stressful a time that was for me. And the reason that I love tutoring and talking to you guys about this stuff is I can try to, let you know what my experience was like and what I struggled with. And hopefully that can help some of you guys who might be going through the same stuff. I am currently a second-year medical student, so happy ending to the story for me, and there will be a happy ending to the story for you too. So just remember to keep that in mind, even on the dark days when it's like, oh my gosh, I don't remember what the heck insulin does versus glucagon. Oh my gosh. Take a deep breath. It's all going to turn out okay. All right, cool. So let's just get started by doing a few logistical things first. So this is a webinar, and that's like one of the Zoom formats you can have a meeting in versus a meeting. So since it's a webinar, I can't physically see you. So hopefully you guys can see me okay, and hopefully you guys can hear me okay, but I cannot see or hear you. So what that means is you can absolutely do this in your pajamas, even your pajama tops. I know most of us do Zoom stuff with nice on top and then pajamas down below, but you can do pajamas anywhere you want because I can't see you, and I also can't hear you. So how you can communicate with me is in a few different ways. And let's talk about that. I know you guys are all Zoom pros by now, but just to review how we'll be using the wonderful Zoom technology tonight. There's 3 functions that we can use. So the first one is the chat function. And that is represented probably along the bottom of your screen or maybe in the top right, depending on what interface you're using. And it's represented by a little talking bubble. And in that you can type any comments you want. And what I would ask is that you change the default setting, because when you pull it up to write a message, it says right off the default to panelists. And that means that I'll be able to see it, which is great. But I'm hoping that we can all learn from each other here tonight. So in order for your fellow attendees to be able to see your great comments and questions as well, if you could set the setting to panelists and attendees when you do a chat, then everybody can see what you're asking. That also helps because when I start answering a question or addressing a comment that one of you guys have put in the chat, it makes it so that everybody else doesn't think I'm crazy and just responding to something that they've never seen. So let's practice with the chat function. I would like to ask you guys, all 49 of you here, if you could if you have free fingers right now, type us in and let us know where you're coming from. I'm coming to you live from New Haven, Connecticut. We got Renee from Sonoma. Oh, we got Erin from NOLA. I hope Mardi Gras was still had that festive spirit, even though I know this year was different. Delaware, Toronto, Orlando. Hi, Orlando. Hey, what up, Memphis? We got a lot of Toronto people. Oh, Milana, NYC is my hometown. I'm not there right now, but lots of heart for NYC. Oh, we got some Puerto Ricanos in the house. Michigan, North Georgia. Oh my gosh, this is so great. I'm reading from everybody. Oh, Aurelio's in NYC as well. Massachusetts, I was born there. What up, Brandon? Fort Collins, Colorado. I hope you guys are, I know Kelsey's comment in the chat just killed me. Hi from, quote, middle of nowhere, Ohio. I love that, Kelsey. I know that things are really crazy right now for a lot of the country in terms of temperatures and electricity. Luckily, here on the East Coast where I am, things are fine, but I just want to send some love and support to you guys who might be having challenging situations near you. I guess the fact that you were able to log on tonight means at least you have electricity, which I'm very happy to hear, but much love to you and your families. I hope everyone's doing okay. Oh, we got Kai Ying from Singapore and Kevin from Thailand. Wow. Yeah, Jessica, great question. What time is it in Singapore right now in Thailand? I don't know if I should say, good morning to you with a morning coffee as opposed to okay, so good morning to you, Kai Ying. And here on the East Coast, yeah, we're doing okay. At least on the northern side of the East Coast where I am. I mean, it's cold, but it's not any colder than normal here, and it's actually colder for a lot of you guys in the middle of the country, and no issues with the energy and stuff. So I'm happy that you guys are all here and that you're doing well, and you're all in my thoughts, your families too. Cool. All right, so you guys are all pros with the chat. And I encourage you, as we're talking, type stuff in the chat, either to me, to each other. We can use that to keep the conversation going. If you do have a specific question, which I hope you will, because I hope we'll be doing lots of Q&A today. But if you have a specific question that you'd like me to answer for the group, which I think is great, because if you have a question, I guarantee you many, many other people have the same question. Let's not use the chat for that. Let's use instead the Q&A function. So the Q&A function is represented by two little talking bubbles. And the reason I ask that is just like, I hope in the chat you guys will be kind of, real time, putting comments in, which is awesome. But if you put questions you want me to answer in there, it's just like a little harder for me to see them. Sometimes I miss them because the chat's going at a high pace, hopefully. So if you put it in the Q&A, it just comes in a more focused way to me, and I can check off when I've answered a question. So just so I can be more sure that I'm not missing any questions, if you could use the Q&A function to ask questions to me, that would be really helpful for me. So if you already have some, feel free to put them in there. They'll be on our running list. Otherwise, as stuff comes to you throughout the session tonight, just put it in the Q&A and we'll deal with it. We'll go through your excellent questions one by one that way. And then the other way that I might interact with you guys is I'm going to use the poll sometimes. I'm actually going to start by using the poll right now. And so let's do that. I probably won't use the raise hand because I'm not great at that function, but let's do poll. So I want to learn a little bit about you guys. So this is an anonymous poll that I'm launching right now to learn about where you guys are in your studying life. So there's probably many other ways, many other backgrounds than are represented here, but at least to the best of your ability, pick the answer that matches where you're coming to me from the best. That helps me. In the meantime, I'll sip on my tea. Amazing. Got my notes on the side. Cool. Okay, so about 70% of you guys have voted, so I'll give it another just a few seconds to get your guys's responses. Okay. Cool. All right, so 90% of you guys have voted, so I will go ahead and close the poll. So 3, 2, 1, ending the poll, and I'll share the results so you guys can see too. All right, who do we have here? All right, so in terms of where you guys are in your pre-med studies, okay, so we have a pretty big mix in if it looks like about 40% of you guys-ish are still completing your undergrad studies. And from that, most of you are in your third year, so juniors, okay. But then more of you than not, it looks like Yeah, more of you than not have already finished your undergrad. So some of you guys are doing an official post-bac program. That's what I did as well. I'll share my little story with you after this. And then some of you guys are in a gap year or more than one gap years. Cool. All right. So that's helpful for me because that lets me know that a lot of these questions about the Mcat are probably more pressing and less theoretical to many of you. Although for those of you who are just starting out, first of all, it's amazing that you're spending your Sunday night here trying to get ready for the Mcat. It shows us so much dedication for everybody. And then for those of you who are in your first or second year, when it's further off already, even more props to you for being on the ball and trying to get ahead of this stuff. So amazing. All right. So in terms of whether you guys have either taken it, so we got about one quarter of you guys already took it and plan to retake it. So I know retaking carries its own stresses and anxieties that we can talk about for sure. But 3/4 of you haven't taken it yet. Okay. So you're prepping for this new, maybe slightly unknown challenge. Okay. So in terms of whether you guys have started studying yet, I love, so it's like basically a 50-50 split from those of you who are, studying and like on a set path. And those of you who are like kind of studying. I wrote that answer choice to capture a phase that I know I was in for a minute, which was like, I've looked at some stuff, but I definitely haven't buckled down yet. So, okay. So some of you guys still have some wiggle room in thinking about how you're going to approach your studies. Okay. And then about 10% of you haven't started yet at all, which is totally applicable based on where a lot of you guys are in your timelines. Okay, so speaking of timelines, let's see when you guys are planning to apply to med school. So a lot of you guys are planning to apply this upcoming cycle. So summer 2021, okay, more than half of you. And then for most of the rest of you, the year after that. So coming up still pretty soon. And then for more of a minority of you guys, it's further off in the cycle. Oh, and somebody did already apply the cycle. I send you all the most positive vibes I possibly can. I hope that you get tons of good results, and I hope that everyone's fighting over you at second look weekends. Well, cool. So thank you so much for telling me about you guys. That really helps me know kind of like what level of detail to talk about, and also it kind of helps me expect the level of questions that we might be getting. Speaking of which, let me check the Q&A. No Q&A yet. Okay, cool. So you guys told me about you. It's only fair for me to tell you about me now in response. So I mentioned that I'm a second-year medical student. I am at the Yale School of Medicine here in New Haven, Connecticut. And I'm kind of from around this area, so I'm kind of a Northeast gal through and through, whether from New York or Boston or here. My path to medical school was very non-traditional. So I know that, those of you who are taking your gap years right now, you may feel like you're going to be so old when you get to med school, and it's going to be so late and you're so far behind. And I'm grinning because I was 12 years out of undergrad when I started med school. So I had a totally different career. In the past, I worked as a management consultant. And then when I entered my 30s, well, right when I was about entering my 30s, I was like, it would be fun for a fun little change of pace. Maybe I'll change my entire career and go to med school. So for any of you guys who feel like, I don't look like the typical medical student, or, I haven't done the things that everybody else has done, that's okay. There's not just one way to be a medical student. I know it feels like a lot of times, especially like with the pre-med advisors, that there's this like one master checklist, and like you have to do this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing, and you got to check all the boxes, and that's like the one way to bake a med student, like it's a brownie recipe or something. And let me just assure you that medical schools are looking for individuals with individual unique perspectives and experiences and strengths and interests. Think of all the different types of physicians there are, from academic physicians to community physicians to physicians who also have law degrees and advocate for policy changes. So there's not one kind of physician. There's not one kind of medical student. So you can be you and still be a medical student and a physician. So don't feel like, you're different in a bad way, right? I hope that you're different from everybody else because that's how you're going to stand out. And we would use the word unique for that in a positive light rather than, different or lacking or weird or whatever. Cool. Awesome. Oh, and that's so yeah. So my undergraduate major, I'm seeing a lot of you guys saying like about other stuff that you got going on, like Kelsey in pharmacy school, and like we can talk, Jessica, about your retake questions also. But Renee asked in the chat what my undergrad major was. Oh my God, it had nothing to do with science. I was an economics major. And French. I double majored in French because I wanted to just study abroad in Paris for a year. So I was like, sure, I'll be a French major if you let me eat baguette for a year. That sounds great. Ah, oui, Jessica. Oh, lovely. Okay, so we can parler en français ensemble. So I think in undergrad in my school, I went to NYU undergrad years ago, decades ago, literally. And in my general program, you had to take like, a science course and a language course and like, I don't know, like a history class, just as part of the general requirements. So I think I took one science course as part of the general requirements, and it was like the science of sports because I really liked sports. So I learned how to like hit a ball using physics. So I had never taken science before. So yeah, Renee, I absolutely had to do a post-bac, a career changer post-bac. I did that at Hunter College, which is in the City University of New York. It's one of the public schools in New York City because I lived in New York at that time. So don't, if you've never taken a science class and you're working your way through it, really? Oh my God, that's so cool. Oh, Aurelio, you have to message me after this. We can talk about Hunter. Hawks all the way. And Milana, you're at Hunter too. Oh, cool. So first of all, Aurelio and Milana, you guys should connect because you're at the same school. And then you guys should definitely message me or email. I'll give you my email at the end and you can talk to me. But yeah, so this just goes to show that in the pre-med world not the pre-med, I don't like to say it in the pre-med world, in the medical community, it's a smaller community than you would think. So be nice to everybody because you never know when you're going to run into somebody again in the future, and we can all help each other out, right? And Mandana, that is so cool that you have a different career as well. As a psychologist, so one thing that I like to talk about in the other Mcat sessions, I know that, we're talking about mental health tonight and, all this is part of that, is realizing like so a lot of times I hear from students, either my friends who are applying or the students that I'm tutoring for the Mcat or people that I talk to in, who are interviewing at the schools. And they say like, they say they did this wonderful thing in the past, but it has nothing to do with medicine. And what I like to remind people is that like, you come to medical school to learn medicine. They don't expect you to know the medicine when you come to medical school. What they want is people who have skills and talents that can be well leveraged in the field. So, somebody who is in pharmacy school, like, wow, the attention to detail that you must have, and the ability to think critically about chemical interactions, like, wow, what a great skill to be able to bring. Is it exactly what you're going to be learning in medical school? No. Is it applicable? Yes. As a psychologist, oh my gosh, talking to people and being able to get them to trust you and build a rapport with them and, be empathetic and understand what people are going through, huge connection. Even like I wrote in my application essay a lot about, I worked at a hospital. I worked full time when I was doing my post-bac, which is something we can talk about also, how to balance work and school stuff, because I know a lot of you guys are doing that. So I worked at a hospital. I talked a lot about this stuff in my hospital, but I actually talked a lot about also how I waited tables all through undergrad and how, waiting tables at a busy restaurant, like, taught me so much about relating to different types of people, from the super fancy customers in the front of the house who wanted everything just so, to the busboy who was cranky and didn't want to help me with a certain thing, to the people in the kitchen. And like, anything that you've gone through, you can think about how it gave you experiences and you learned from it things that you can use later on. So I hope that just starting from this place of saying like, who you are is okay. What you've learned is wonderful. You have so much to offer. You have so much to give, can maybe give us at least that first deep breath of relaxation to realize that, yes, the MCAT is important. Yes, we want to do our best, but it's one part of our holistic application, and we are strong people with lots to offer. No matter how we might sometimes talk ourselves down and say, oh, what I look like on paper is not good enough, blah, 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 blah. Cool. All right. Yeah. So great, Kelsey. We'll definitely talk about that for sure. Awesome. And I already have some questions coming in the Q&A, which is amazing. Cool. So let's just start, I guess. Let's dig into like the topic at hand. And I'm going to definitely, so I have some questions in the Q&A that I'm going to get to at certain points. I'm already thinking about how we might tie that in. And I also have some stuff we can talk about working full-time as well. So those are the two things I'm already earmarking. But let's start by I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen. Well, I'm going to try to share my screen. We all know that, well, you guys don't know me that well yet, but technical stuff and me often do not get along. So we're going to do the best we can here. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing, and I'm hoping that you're now seeing Google Chrome, the World Health Organization. And if you're not, just throw it in the chat, just so I know, because I have a tendency to babble about stuff that I think you're seeing. All right, so mental health. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. So I think we should start by defining what it is, because if we're going to try to achieve it, we should at least know what we're striving for. So this is the World Health Organization's page on mental health. And I like to start by looking at their definition. So here's their definition of mental health, which I've highlighted. And I have some notes on the side that I wanted to make on this. So the World Health Organization defines mental wellness, as you can see here, as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities. So that's the first thing that I was talking you guys all up before, because you all have these abilities, and realizing that and not forgetting that in streams of negative down talk is hugely important. So first of all, we realize our own abilities. Second, we can cope with the normal stresses of life if we have positive mental health. That's something that I definitely want. And in addition, the normal stresses of life, such as this test, which, to us feels really big, but is one of many stressors that we'll have to overcome in the journey towards a medical career. Can work productively. So I want to put a pin in that, and I'm going to come to it at the end. So the ability to work productively is part of the definition of mental health, and is able to make a contribution to his or her own community. So that's the World Health Organization definition of mental health. And then here is the mentalhealth.gov. This is from the Department of Health and Human Services here in the US. And, they talk about a lot of stuff, but I wanted to draw your attention to this. So positive mental health, which is what we're striving for, allows people to realize their full potential. Great. Cope with the stresses of life, like the MCAT. Great. Work productively. Again, notice how the ability to work productively is a consequence of having mental health. Just like how here, being able to work productively is enabled by mental health, and make more meaningful contributions to their communities. Okay, so why am I making such a big deal about the ability to work productively? I'm going to stop sharing now just to get myself back on the screen and real talk with you. Okay. I find, so you guys are all very task-oriented, goal-oriented people, right? You want to go into medicine. You're pre-meds. You're trying to apply to medical school. You want to do well. You want to have a great application. You want to get in, blah, blah, blah. So you're very task-oriented, goal-oriented people. So that's why I'm focusing on how mental health can actually help you work productively, achieve those productivity goals that you want. Because I feel like we have to shift our perspective, or many of us have to shift our perspective. I mean, you guys are here for a talk on mental health, so this might be something that you already endorse, but others who you come into contact with might not feel the same way. So I feel like a lot of times we have this perception that activities focused on mental health are necessary. Yes, yes, they're very necessary. Yes, yes, yes. But they come at the expense of activities focused on my goals. I feel like a lot of us, and I count myself in this sometimes too, we think that like, yeah, it's, mental health is important, but it's something I just don't really have time for right now. Or there's a trade-off, right? I can either do stuff that's focused on my mental health, or I can do stuff that's focused on getting me where I want to be with my goals. So it's like mental health stuff is important at the expense of stuff I'm doing to try to achieve my goals. That's a common perspective. And I hope that we can shift that perspective. And what I hope we can shift it to is that activities focused on mental health are necessary. Yes, just like we said before. But instead of coming at the expense of activities directed towards my goals, let's say they increase the efficacy of activities focused towards my goals. So if you're doing stuff to maintain a positive state of mental health, then the studying that you're doing you will be able to have more productive studying. You will be able to do things towards your goals more productively. And that's why I started, I'm just going to go back to that screen share again. That's why I started by making this whole big point that mental health allows productive work. Mental health allows productive work. So like all the tips I'm going to give for how to, or ways that I think can help you achieve a strong state of mental health during this process, please don't view them as something as like nice to have, like if you have a day off and like, or something that you, really shouldn't be doing because you don't have time to do them, because you really should be focusing on studying more. I hope that you view these as part of your studying and preparation plan, and that they will help you be more effective rather than taking time away from making you more effective. Okay, cool. So hopefully you're drinking the Kool-Aid that I'm putting out there. And if anybody, in your own circle, because I'm sure you guys might be having family members that ask you how things are going and might say, hey, why are you're going to go for a walk outside right now? Shouldn't you be studying? Like, oh, okay, well, there's a assumption baked into that judgmental comment that going for a walk outside is something that's not enabling my goals. So let's talk about how that might not be true. And for people that you're studying with, encourage them, don't be studying for 15 hours a day inside without any sunlight. You will not do well. Okay, so that's the premise that we're starting for. I hope you guys buy into it along with me. Cool. All right. So that being said, actually, I'm going to go back to what I was showing you before. So here again, we're on the Department of Health and Human Services, mentalhealth.gov. And they give you some, just guidelines of ways to maintain positive mental health. And I thought we could start by talking about some of these, and then I'll get into some more specific Mcat coping skills at the end. So the first and foremost thing that we need to say right off the bat, is that getting professional help if you need it there's a reason it's the first thing on this list, right? It's hugely important. And there's absolutely no downside to doing this. So I can say that when I actually got to medical school, I was so pleasantly surprised with how there's absolutely no stigma to taking care of your mental health in medical school. And I think it's making its way up in the echelons of medical hierarchy as well, and that residents and attendings are realizing that this is really important too. So I know you guys probably heard stories of, back in the day, during medical education, there was no hours limit. So you could work without any, break limitations, and people kind of expected you to really just kind of buckle down and eat it. There was like this culture of, you have to like prove how tough and strong you are by just like taking it, pushing yourself to the limit. And the way that you showed that you were good or could hack it or were worthy of respect was by pushing yourself further than other people in terms of working harder, having less sleep, being willing to, stretch yourself further. Yeah, absolutely. So, so I love the comments that Renee and Milana are making in the chat. Yeah, I think that, I think people are coming around to that more. Even within my class, we get from our administration here all the time, we get support, like emails reminding us about all the support systems that we have, from therapists, counselors, sessions with the social workers where we can process what we're going through. So there's no stigma to taking care of your mental health when you're in medical school and as you go forward. So I hope that you realize that where you're going, it's to be honest, it's kind of expected that you are self-reflective enough to realize when you need help, because the true problem is not needing help. The true problem is not needing help and seeking it out. The true problem is needing help and choosing not to seek it out when it's needed, either because you aren't engaging in the self-reflection to realize that it's needed, or you realize that it's needed, but for whatever reason are uncomfortable seeking it out. So getting professional help when you need it, first and foremost, right on there. And that can be, a therapist, like a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a counselor. That could even be like your advisor. So that could be a great place to start. About, hey, I'm super stressed about this whole process. Like, can I talk to you about it? And they deal with people getting into school all the time, so they can probably point you towards other things as well. And yeah, like how Renee is saying, and Aurelio is supporting as well. Like, yeah, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. Like, if you can't, if you're not in a place where you can take on any more stress because you're already stretched so thin, then how can you successfully care for the people in your life and your patients as well? And I agree, going outside, oh my God, that's one of my tips that I'm going to say later. But I think the fact that you guys already agree with this, especially during COVID times, so important to just get some sunlight on your face, get some wind on your face, realize that we are part of something that has been going on for thousands of years, and everything is going to be okay. Oh, I love that. You can't pour from an empty cup, Camille, in the chat. That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. And then the other thing I just want to say is that, like, so as we go through the steps of our medical training and our medical careers, it's only going to get harder. Like, being a medical student is more difficult and challenging than being a pre-medical student. And being a resident is definitely going to be more challenging than being a medical student. And then being an attending, you have, the stress is going to be a little bit different, but that stress of like the ultimate responsibility for the patient is there with you. So things are only going to get harder. So the thing that I really want to drive home in this talk, and to any of my peers or students that I'm helping to mentor and tutor, is like, we have to set up good patterns now. We have to set up good systems of support now, because medical training is decades long. It's not, we can't think that we'll just like power through it in a way and just deal with it for now. And I'm using air quotes copiously on purpose, because it's going to go on for a long time. You can't power through, deal with it just for now. 4 years of pre-med, 4 years of medical school, 7 years of residency. That's not humanly, physically possible. So what we need to do now, when we have fewer stresses compared to what's coming later, is we need to set up the good habits now. It's a marathon, like Sidla was saying. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's like make those good habits now. Let's reach out to, let's realize how to set up patterns of support that help us. Let's realize by being honest with ourselves when we do need help. Let's do all that now because we can't, it's going to get harder. So prepping for that now with good habits is really important. Okay, so connecting with others, that's the next one. So first of all, I'm so happy you guys are here because we're all connecting with each other right now in a way that I think is super, super helpful. So in terms of the MCAT specific flavor of connecting with others, I think one really great way of doing this is to make like a study support buddy. Um, just somebody who's going through a similar thing that you are. Maybe nobody in your tightest friend circle right now is taking the MCAT, or maybe nobody in your tightest friend circle is even applying to medical school. So I think it would behoove you to find somebody who is, on a similar time frame than you, maybe, so that you and make a concerted effort to say like, hey, do you want to be accountability buddies? Or hey, do you want to like check in once a week and see how things are going? If you don't already have somebody like that, because having that, they're going to get it when other people might not. Like if you're going to need someone to call or text and be like, oh my gosh, like, so I just took a practice exam and like my chem phys score went down like 2 points, and like, oh my God, like other people in your life will have no idea what that means and why it feels so terrible right now. But somebody who is going through the same thing as you will understand what that means and why that feels so terrible. And they can talk to you about that. And other ways to like connect. So having some like a study buddy, I think is really helpful. And the other reason that I think that connecting with somebody who's going through the same thing with you that you are is helpful is like by being the support person for someone else, you can give the advice that you know is right, but sometimes you have trouble taking yourself. So like we're all giving each other really good tips right now in the chat and through our conversation. But I still admit, even though I'm like, go outside, it's the best thing for you. Like some days I struggle to go outside because I'm like, no, I'm too busy. Right. So I think by being somebody else's support system and giving that, like functioning as the person to give advice to them, you help yourself also. So just like for me right now, I'm reminding you guys of all the stuff that I think someone should do to deal with stresses. You know what that's helping me do right now? That's helping me remind myself of all the stuff that I need to do to take care of myself. So sometimes by giving the advice to somebody else, you get a chance to, first of all, realize it's wisdom because you're choosing to advise somebody else on it. So you clearly must think it actually is true. And you get to remind yourself of the stuff that sometimes, you know how they say, like, sometimes if you say stuff that's critical of yourself, which I do all the time. Sometimes they say like, would you say that to your friend? Like that mean thing you just said to yourself, like, would you ever talk to a friend that way? And this is kind of the same idea, which is, the support that you're giving to the friend, give it right on back to yourself, right? Treat the way that you're treating your study buddy can be an inspiration to treat yourself the same way. So I think connecting with somebody who's on the same timeline as you, who's dealing with similar pressures, can be really helpful. But then also remember, it's important to connect with the people, and it's helpful and restorative to connect with the people in your life who are not doing anything pre-medically related. Sometimes it's such a breath of fresh air to talk to people who are not in the same pressure cooker that you are, who are just living life. Or even if they are in the same pressure cooker, you are doing the same stuff, to just not talk about that stuff. So I think like scheduling social activities with people via a calendar can be really helpful to make sure that you make time for it. Because if you just wait, especially in COVID times, if you just wait for opportunities to arise to do stuff with people, to talk to them on the phone or to Zoom with them or to, do a social distance walk or whatever. You'll never feel like you have enough time for it because you always have all this other stuff that you have to do. Whereas if you proactively plan it out, put it on the calendar, because you know that doing so is going to help your mental health and wellness, which will enable you to work productively. If you schedule in advance, then it's there, it's on the calendar, and canceling it is a lot easier. Sorry, canceling it is a lot harder than never sending it out to begin with. All right, cool. So staying positive. So you guys are you're already helping so much with this. I'm actually going to table this one because we have some tips on staying positive later. So getting physically active, you guys are already in the chat, like showing that you totally are on board with this, which I love. So Mandana talks about doing meditation and gymming in the morning. And I totally agree that helps you stay focused. And I think, Miracle and Renee were talking about like getting outside, getting some fresh air. And I think that stuff is completely super important. And so remember how we were reframing at the beginning, how like mental health activities isn't stuff that takes away from your goal-oriented activities. It's something that enables your goal-oriented activities. I think a shift of perspective with physical activity is really helpful also, because I think a lot of us, when we think about being physically active, we think of like logging a session at the gym, like 20 minutes on the elliptical, or like doing what I used to do in lacrosse practice, or like bench pressing, or we think of like working out. And that's great. If you have time, if you have the motivation and the desire to do that, then do it. But if thinking that you need to do those things feels too prohibitively, like the investment of time, energy to do that, if that feels prohibitively high right now, if it's like, no, there's no way I could like do what I used to do at the gym right now. I can't do that. So reframe how you're thinking about physical activity. Think of it as just like moving your body. So there's a reason that they say get physically active rather than like work out or like log a sweat session. It's just about moving your body so that you can, first of all, moving your body gets you out of your head. If you have anxiety and you're stressing out about stuff, like I know a lot of you guys are from the comments and from the Q&As, then it's much harder to continue to focus on those things, those negative thoughts, those anxious thoughts, if you start moving your body and let your focus go to the movement of your body. So moving your body gets you out of your head. Moving your body gets you endorphins. Moving your body helps you focus. And so do some stretching, do some gentle yoga. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes either. It could be 5 minutes at a time. You've studied for an hour, get up and do some walking lunges across your room. Do some stretches, pick a yoga pose and learn how to do it or something. So focusing on the mental and the mood aspects of being physically active, not the 6-pack, not how many calories your watch tells you burned, can help you remind yourself why you're making time for this. Because when you have 3,000 flashcards you haven't done yet, it can feel like getting up and working out is not the right choice to make. But even with those 3,000 flashcards, if you remind yourself that, okay, if I move my body, mentally, I will feel release. I will get endorphins that will help my mood. And I will have a brief respite from the anxious thoughts in my head. Maybe moving my body right now is a good choice, even though I have 3,000 flashcards to do. So getting physically active in whatever way makes you feel good is a smart choice, and it's not a trade-off choice. Helping others. So this can be like being a study buddy to your friend, like we talked about, like you're like supporting your friend. But I also think that reconnecting with your purpose, and I'll pause, I'll do more about this later. Reminding yourself why we're doing this is really, really helpful. And sometimes we forget why we're doing this, even though we know why we're doing this. We want to get into med school, but sometimes like, yeah, but like, why did we want to do that? Can be helpful to remind yourself of. Getting enough sleep. Okay. So we know that that's important, but again, that sounds like something your mom tells you, and that sounds like a luxury. It's like, yeah, well, I don't have enough time to sleep well because I'm busy and I'm trying to do well on this. Helps you work productively. It's not a luxury. It's not you being too easy on yourself. It's you giving yourself the things you need to produce the effect that you want. It's better for memory and learning. You cannot cram for the Mcat. Can't do it. Can't do it. It's not a test on recalling information. It's a test on how well you think critically. And think about think about the last time you tried to like deal with a complex problem when you were tired. It doesn't work. You need to be at your peak mental awareness, which will help with having sleep, and then developing coping skills, which we'll get into a lot later. Okay, so I'm going to stop that and go into some Mcat specific skills. And I'm going to take a quick little pause and see how we're doing. Okay, so, okay. Yeah. Okay. So I've had a few questions in the chat about having like anxiety disorder of various kinds, whether it's anxiety disorder, dealing like social anxiety disorder, dealing with talking to people, new people in public, or generalized anxiety disorder and depression, and how to deal with those things, and whether you can continue going forward in medicine with those conditions. So I think the first thing to recognize is that those disorders are much more common than you might think. So if you think of how many doctors there are in the world, and you think of the prevalence of depression, I think the prevalence of depression in the US population is 40%. And I guarantee you that some of those doctors have depression and have anxiety and might have social anxiety disorder. So first of all, normalizing that that many people deal with these things can be a good first step. The second thing, like we talked about, is using professional help to, if you have a medical diagnosis of one of these things, to support you. So, use the professional help that I hope that you are already making use of to help you towards these goals. I think also just be aware that in medical schools, they make what they call like reasonable accommodations for people with various medical conditions. So, if you have, I'm just going to use a non psychology related example to make the point more clearly. Let's say you had, let's say you were an amputee and you only had one leg, and standing in surgery for 8 hours was difficult. So they have certain reasonable accommodations that they can give you to accommodate that condition. So it's absolutely possible to go into medicine with mood disorders or with other disorders like social anxiety disorder. It's just, you need to make to seek out help and use it to the best, to the fullest extent possible. And realize that it's not just you, right? You're not alone. And being supportive of yourself and saying, this is what I need, and then asking for those things can really help you. So I think that that can really help. Also remember that there's many different types of physicians. So you can be a physician who doesn't talk to patients. If talking to patients is not something that gets you energized, then you can be a pathologist who doesn't directly deal with patients, or you could be a research, an MD, PhD who decides to spend all their time in the lab. So the study of medicine can take many different forms based on what energizes the person that's studying it. And in terms of whether you need, some days you need to take more breaks to study, maybe one of the questions is asking, and some days unable to study. Then that's okay. Just be honest with yourself, that is what you need, and then make accommodations around those days to deal with it. It's normal. It's possible, and just be understanding and supportive of yourself and your needs to get them met. Yeah, I would say. Okay, so you guys are asking really great questions, really, really great questions. And okay, so let's talk about, all right, so I'm just coming back to the chat. I was looking at the Q&A for a little bit. Okay, so Mandana asked in the chat, I listen to my recordings on the Mcat content when exercising or YouTube videos on Mcat. Is it a good idea or best to completely unplug from the Mcat when exercising? Mandana, you bring up a great point about boundaries. And I think one of the coping skills that I wanted to talk about a little bit, in addition, with Jessica asked a question in the Q&A about time management. I think a key point that I want to make is the importance of boundaries and scheduling. So, although obviously, Madonna, it's up to you what makes you feel energized. I think it's a very good idea to separate, so to have boundaries in many different ways. Boundaries with people in your life. So if maybe your sister expects you to be able to talk to her on the phone for 2 hours every night, because that's what you guys do, maybe you need to set a boundary in the month before your exam that you can't do that. Boundaries with your boss. Maybe your boss expects you to stay 30 minutes after your shift every day to help with something. And maybe you need to say, hey, I can't do that for the next 2 months. And it can be really scary to set these boundaries, but hugely freeing. And there's a motivational speaker I really like who talks about the power of yes, and like always saying yes to yourself and your capabilities, and always saying yes to opportunity. But remembering that in order to manifest the yeses that you want in your life, a lot of times you have to use the power of no, which is no, I can't do that, because yes, I want to do this. So setting boundaries is hugely important. And then I think setting boundaries in your time, like very specifically with your time, is a microcosm version of that. So I suggest delineating study time. I think a lot of times, especially when I have students that are studying for the Mcat, like as their full-time thing, like they're taking a gap year and they aren't working, and or they just want to study for the Mcat for the summer. They're doing the 3 months of the summer just studying for the Mcat. Having just your only thing to do that day being this amorphous study for the Mcat, I think can be very damaging, because then it starts bleeding into every minute of your life. So I think the best thing to do is to set out when you're going to study from this time to this time. And then you do it. You start at the time you were going to start, you stop at the time you were going to stop, and then you stop and you do the other things. And I think that what can really help enable that is having a different physical space where you go to study. So, and that can be, I know in this time that's very hard, but that could even be like a different corner of your couch or a different chair or a different room. So that's a place where you go and you do that from this time to this time, and you do your studying in those hours. And then when you're not studying, you're doing the other thing. So Madonna, from my personal perspective, I think it's better to confine your studying to certain times and free up the rest of your life outside of those focused times to let your life breathe non-Mcat stuff. That being said, if you enjoy working out while listening to the stuff, if it makes your workout go faster, if it's something you enjoy, then do it. There's no hard and fast rule. But I think the thing that I want you guys to think about is the power of single-mindedly condensing your focus on one thing, doing that one thing, and then stopping that thing and doing something else. study for 4 hours, and then go see your friends. And ways that you can help with time management on that, I think, is to make a schedule for the day. I know that sounds so easy, but actually saying, okay, from 8 to 9, I'm going to do this and da da da. And you can build in small breaks in your study time. So like 8 to 8:50 with a 8:50 to 9 time to check your texts, use the bathroom, refill your coffee. I think using airplane mode on your devices, or do not disturb if you don't want to go full airplane, can be really helpful, because even when you're studying, if you have group chats coming in all the time and, phone calls and stuff, or if you're checking your browser to see if that order, you're checking your Gmail to see if that thing came in, you're not really actually studying during that time. So I would say, as much as you possibly can, try to do one thing at a time and focus on that one thing. So during your study time, I mean, they even make things for your computer where you can like restrict access to certain websites if, like me, you can't be trusted with your own time. So tips for time management and sticking to those plans, I would say make a schedule, an hour by hour schedule, build in breaks for the stuff that you do when you're studying, but you don't want to do when you're focused. And then I think also build in like buffer transition times. So I think what I'm trying to say is like build a realistic schedule. If you work from 9 to 5 and then you're going to study after that, like build in a full hour or whatever to get to the next place, to have a snack, to da da da. Don't say that you're going to study right afterwards, because then you're setting unrealistic plans that you will break from the beginning and then cannot stick to. Okay. So let's see. So managing scheduling when you have other obligations. Kelsey asked a question about this. So grocery shopping takes longer than expected. Projects take longer than you think. So you guys have some stuff in the chat too about this. So Sarah's talking about making a schedule. That's great. Study times, breaks, meals, even times with friends. I totally think that that's exactly what we should aspire to, Sarah. So building a realistic schedule, to get to Kelsey's question. If grocery shopping takes 45 minutes, then schedule it in for 45 minutes, or schedule it for an hour. And then you can have some time back then. The more realistic you can build your schedule, then the more it's something you can actually stick to. And, breaking the rules that you set for yourself doesn't become a given. And then, because once you've broken the rules you set for yourself, then, you can break all the other rules too. Sam, I don't know if the PowerPoint will be available, but the recording should definitely be available on Blueprint after this. Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. I should have said that. And then Alexa, wow, writing your schedule on your forearm. I hope that you could be like a tattoo artist during med school to earn some extra money with that skill. But yeah, that's, whatever works for you, just make a plan and stick to it. I love that. And so, Kelsey, the only other thing I would say about setting a schedule when you have other obligations, set the boundaries with the people who ask you to stay late and all that kind of stuff. And then whatever the buffer time it is you think you need to finish the thing and start the next thing, just build in more. Just make it, build in more buffer time. If you get some more time back, then you can always use it in the way you want, but try not to be overly ambitious when you schedule, because that's just going to hurt you. Okay, so let's see. Checking out the questions in the chat. Oh, thank you. Thank you for putting that question about the sleep. I'm sorry about that. Sleep. Yes. Sleep. Great point. So I think sleep can kind of play into the scheduling thing that we talked about, like scheduling the time that you're going to sleep can be really helpful. The other thing to think about with sleep is, yeah, Mandana, that's a great idea. I was going to say, so think strategically about when you want to do it also. Not saying like, should I do it or not, but think about when you are at your best mentally. So, a big game changer for me, and I've heard from a lot of people, is realizing that like I was more of a morning person study-wise. I hate getting up early. I hate it. But I started realizing that any work I was doing like after 10 p.m., like I was sitting there doing it, but it wasn't really a high yield use of my time because I was sleepy, I was foggy. Um, and I realized that it's better for me personally to go to bed at 10 p.m. And then if it's a crazy, if it's a crazy week, it's better for me to do some studying at 5 a.m. than for me to do studying at 10 a.m. at 10 p.m. Excuse me. So first of all, just like think strategically about when you want to sleep, going to bed earlier versus waking up earlier, in order to use the most efficient use of your time. That's something I was getting at before with the scheduling thing too. Like try to do things in the most focused, efficient way possible. And if your brain is better at 2 a.m. than your brain is at 7 a.m., then, try to do your study time from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Do it when it's the most, when you get the highest reward from it, the highest yield. So then putting it in the schedule, sticking to it. And if there's things that are keeping you from going to sleep, ask yourself, like, what's more important? Is this thing more important than me? Maybe don't even phrase it to yourself as like getting sleep, because that's not, that again is kind of making it sound like it's a luxury, like not focusing on why. So maybe just say to yourself, is it more important for me to do this thing, whatever that's keeping you away from sleep, or to be rested and mentally sharp tomorrow when I do blah, blah, blah? And ask yourself that question and weigh the pros and cons of doing this thing that's keeping you from going to sleep or being mentally sharp and blah, blah, blah for tomorrow. So maybe just by reframing the trade-off, it might be easier to make a choice that includes sleep if you don't automatically, if you remind yourself of the benefits of sleep rather than making sleep seem like it's just like the nice to have thing that you get to do when you're finished with everything for the day. I love the idea of using sleep guided meditations. I use those as well. So that can be something they make. So first of all, meditation is great, I think. And there's a lot of free resources where you can get meditations to listen to, either just some nice music, or what I think is really helpful is guided ones where someone talks to you and they say what you need to hear at that time, basically. So they have ones on reducing anxiety. They have ones on reducing stress. They have ones with just simple breathing exercises that as a result will make you feel more calm. And they even have some, like Mandana is saying, to help you sleep. They have ones that might help you transition into the mindset of sleep. Like, okay, it's time to go to bed now. I listen to that one a lot. And then they also have ones that if you're lying in bed and having trouble, passing into sleep, they have ones that can help you as well with that. You're welcome. Okay, so I think I answered and specific tips on getting enough sleep with studying and working a job. I think I answered that to the best of my ability. Okay, so just going back to the Q&A really quick. So I have questions on mental pressure days before the Mcat. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly there's some burnout questions and then some like test day anxiety questions. So let me do those quickly. That's so funny. Okay, so let's talk about, I guess we could do test anxiety first because I have this slide up. So I think you're seeing my PowerPoint. If you're not, then let me know. But okay, so dealing with test anxiety. So one of the questions in the QA was like, how do you deal with the stress and the mental pressures like days before the Mcat? And then somebody was asking about anxiety like mid-exam and stuff like that. So, oh my gosh, Simmerjeet, I love Insight Timer. It's my favorite in the chat. So what can cause test anxiety leading up to the test is a few things. One of them is, lack of preparedness. If we've all had that dream where we forgot that we've registered for some class And now the exam for that class that we've never been to is tomorrow. And the reason that in that dream we feel so awful is because we truly are not prepared, which is giving us anxiety. So in order to avoid a situation where days before the test or, the week before the test, you're feeling tons of anxiety, is to, truly prepare, which requires often, I think, a timeline longer than some students realize. So it's for most students, it depends on what you're doing. If you're working, if you're not, blah, blah, blah. Like it takes months to prepare for the Mcat, and you have to spend time on it. So if as you're going through your practice materials, you're taking full length practice tests and your scores are not the ones that you would feel comfortable getting on the test, then you need to think about maybe pushing back your test or changing something in your preparation. So the best defense against, so there's like unfounded anxiety, and then there's legitimate worry about the outcome of the test. And in that dream that I mentioned where you forgot you registered for the class and now you have to take the exam, that's legitimate worry because you will not do well on that test because you've never been to that class. So in order to stave off the legitimate worry of not being prepared, prepare as well as you can. So make a realistic timeline. Just because you want to take the Mcat in May doesn't mean maybe you should take the Mcat in May. And if you set yourself up for an unrealistic situation, then you're gonna have anxiety as a result of that. So have realistic timelines. Also, if you have taken the Mcat in the past, then the score you got before, if obviously it must not have been one that you're particularly happy with if you're choosing to retake the Mcat, and that can be really tough to deal with mentally. So a great strategy for that is in the days before the Mcat when the anxiety and the stress might be a lot, is to remind yourself of everything you've done differently. So remind yourself of how well you have now prepared. Last time I took the test, I was in this situation. I'm not that person today. And just like, you can even have like a little speech that you give yourself to remind yourself where you hit the same points every day. This time around, I have done this. I've taken 5 full lengths. I've met with a tutor twice. I have done flashcards every Saturday for 6 months. I have done, so just like reminding yourself of your accomplishments and the stuff that you've done differently than last time can sometimes help take you out of that little anxiety spiral. And in addition, a lot of times these anxiety feelings are coming from thinking about the test in an unhealthy way. So this bullet point on the slide says tying self-worth to the exam, fear of failure. Oh yeah, I think we can all that speaks to a lot of us, I'm sure, right? So in those times when we start feeling this, oh my God, we've all felt that, like, oh my God, I just got this question wrong. I've gotten so many questions wrong. I'm going to do so bad on the test. And if I do bad on the test, and this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to mean blah. So we have to interrupt that script that likes to go on its fun little path, right? So tying self-worth to the exam, we got to nip that in the bud, right? So I encourage you, if you haven't already done this, to go on the AAMC website, which is the American Association of Medical Colleges, and just look at all the parts there are to a med school application. Not because I want you to start writing it now, but I just want you to realize like how much goes into this application. There's this long essay that you write. There are these like 15 little mini essays you write. You put in every grade you've ever gotten in any class, and then they calculate from here to up the wazoo the different types of GPAs. There's letters of recommendation from all these different people that they want to see. So just remember that this exam is one small part of your application to school. I know in my class right now, I can think of people that I sit next to in class every day whose Mcat scores are, more than 10 points less than mine. Guess what? We both got into the same school, and I think they probably got into some better schools than me, but just decided to come here for whatever reason. It's not the be all and end all. It's not. And then the interesting thing is, like, even if it was, let's say the test was the be all and end all. It's not. It's not. Okay. Like, we all have this fear of failing, right? So one thing that I like to do sometimes is to, like, ask myself if there's something I'm scared of. Like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, the worst that can happen, I take the MCAT, I do terribly. I get this whatever score. Okay, what would happen if that happened? And, like, actually think about what the thing is that you're actually scared of. Okay, so what would happen then is that I guess I would either retake it, or I would decide I didn't want to go to medical school and I would have a different job, but I would still have my health, and I would still have the friends in my life that I care about, and I would still have my family. This thing that I'm so terrified of, like, just think about what it would really be, and, like, would it really be that bad? And I'm not saying, like, that you should give up on it, but sometimes by, like, looking the scary thing right in the face, you realize that maybe it's not as scary as you think it is. Perspective. Thank you, Renee. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So that, I think, can be helpful. And then in terms of, so some people ask, like, just in the days before the exam, or if you hit a point of panic or anxiety mid-exam, what should you do? So the person who asked the question in the Q&A said, if you hit a point of panic or anxiety mid-exam, are you allowed to step away from the computer to do a breathing exercise or similar in another room and then return to the exam? I would say you don't even need to step away from the computer, because I think that a good thing to do is to practice. I love this breathing exercise idea that you had, and being able to find that peace no matter where you are. So one that I really like to recommend to people is just the breathing by threes. I think it has a catchier name, but I forget. And what that is, you just close your eyes, you breathe in for 3 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds, and breathe out for 3 seconds. And you just do that a few times. In, hold, and let it out. 1, 2, 3. So you can definitely do that while you're sitting there. The room is quiet. You have your headphones on. You can definitely do that. And then you can always raise your hand if you need the proctor to come over, and you can ask them what you need to, and then they can let you know what the deal is at that particular site. Bathroom breaks and stepping away are definitely okay in between it. I can look up if you can do it during a section. I don't remember. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Great question. But I also, I think practicing an anxiety control mechanism that you can do in place is great for the test and for any other thing you might come across. Okay, great. So you guys are asking amazing questions. And I think these relaxation exercises that we've been talking about, either breathing by threes, doing some guided motivation on Insight Timer, like some of you guys were saying, are really good ways to deal with that stress in the days leading up to it. Also, this is a great reminder that realize that anxiety is normal. Nobody walks in to the MCAT on the day of the test feeling completely ready. Nobody. People who score 528s don't walk in feeling ready on those days. I sure didn't walk in feeling ready on that day. I was terrified, right? It's normal. And part of those feelings of anxiety are physiologic responses to our sympathetic nervous system working. And our sympathetic nervous system helps keep our arousal in top shape so that we're taking stuff in. Walk to the test with a smile on your face. I love that, Mandana. So recognize that if you're feeling these physiological feelings of anxiety, your pulse might be racing, you might be feeling a little sweaty. Your body, maybe think of that as your body doing what it is supposed to do in some ways to help you. Your body wants you to be in peak performance. So your body's trying to help you. So if you're feeling anxious, it doesn't mean necessarily that something's going to go wrong. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you because you feel anxious. It's just your body, getting ready for the game day. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So, and on that note, Jessica asked a question about whether you should study right up to the day before the exam. Definitely not. The day before the exam, for all my students that I build a timeline for, I do it as a day off. So I think being mentally not in a frazzled, overworked state on the day that you go to take the test is hugely important. You want to be rested. You want to feel calm as can be. You want to be mentally clear. So I would not suggest studying right up until the day before the exam. The day before the exam, you should do whatever you need to do to feel good and to feel calm. That could be chocolate cake. That could be a pedicure, maybe when we're allowed to get pedicures again. If you want to look at some flashcards that you've looked at a million times before, just because otherwise you feel like you'll be anxious because you're not doing them, then fine. But I would not plan to, it's never in my suggestions to students and then the day before, make sure you look at blah, 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 blah. No, it's the day before, make sure you're treating yourself right so that when you walk in that day, you feel as good as you possibly can. Okay. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about burnout because you guys asked about that, which is great. Talked a little bit about that. So burnout, I think of as like staying motivated a little bit, kind of, but then there's also stuff in there too. So they've done some studies on burnout in the medical setting, and oh my gosh, Javisha in the chat, painting is amazing. I've never tried that, but lighting candles. Oh my gosh, me and one of my friends who were studying for the Mcat at the same time, we had she was my Mcat lifeline study buddy person. And we would text each other and be like, it's a 3 candle day. we would gauge how stressed we were based on how many candles we were lighting in response to it. So I feel you. Okay. So burnout, they've done some studies on burnout, and what they find a lot is that, in an innately stressful situation, the more control somebody has, the less they feel burnout. So one of the questions was, how do you deal with burnout, especially when you have financial and family responsibilities as a non-trad? I totally get that. And then somebody, let me go back to the chat. I forget the exact wording, but somebody asked about burnout in the, how do you motivate yourself? And how do you deal with burnout in the chat as well. So one way to deal with burnout is to try to exert control where you can. We feel burned out and we feel the heaviness of the world on us, and we feel paralyzed and powerless and demotivated as a result when we feel like we can't, when the world is doing things to us and we are just the victim of it. So there are definitely things in our lives that we can't change. I couldn't change that I needed to have a job when I was studying. Some people can't change that they need to, take care of their, their grandma while they're studying, right? But find the places where you can exert control and then do that. So maybe you want to study, maybe you can control the space that you study in. So pick the space that makes you feel the best. This also goes hand in hand with setting boundaries and asking people for things. Don't be afraid to try to change something in a way that works better for you. You deserve asking for help and getting help, and you are allowed to say, hey, sister, I know I have to help you with your homework every day, and I'm going to do that, and I want to do that, but I would prefer if we would do that before I did my Mcat studying, and if we set a timer and limited our sessions to 20 minutes. So find ways where you can exert control and then exert that control, because that's one way to feel to stave off burnout, to feel like we have power. Yeah, really. Oh my God, I know I miss libraries too. So that could be maybe asking your family members, like, hey, can I have the dining room to myself for an hour every night? So that's one thing. So finding the things you can control and exerting control to help you feel empowered. Another thing is remembering your long-term goals and what motivates you. So I liked to, on the days where I was really burned out and like, why am I doing this to myself? Like there were some days that I legitimately could not remember why I had made these choices, that I wanted to sign up for this test. Like I signed up for the test, and some version of me wanted to do it, but there were some days that I literally couldn't remember why that was. And so on those days, I think having, reflecting on your purpose for going to medical school can help you remind yourself why you're suffering through the process. So I think maybe set a timer for 5 minutes and just quietly reflect or journal. Journaling is a great practice to help get things out of swirling around in here, out on a piece of paper, and then you're done with them. So if you can't like actively volunteer and participate in the medical settings that energize you right now, because I know we can't, then maybe just like take a minute and reflect about that patient that you worked with that one time in that volunteer experience that made you feel so good. I know I worked in a hospital as my day job when I was studying, and there were certain patients that really touched me. And on the days where I was really not feeling it, I would take 5 minutes and I would call each of those patients into my mind, and I would just reflect on them, quietly for a little bit, and remind myself why the experience of dealing with them was so important to me, and how I felt working with them, and how their bad outcomes made me feel bad, and how their good outcomes made me feel happy. And just like sitting with that for a minute and then coming out of it helped me be like, oh yeah, that's why, or thinking about a family member. Maybe the reason you want to go into medicine is maybe a family member had a certain experience with the medical system. So just like take some time and like actually think about that or write about that on the days when you're having trouble. And yeah, this is another great one. So when you're dealing with burnout, and dealing with motivation, somebody talked about how do you motivate yourself to study again. A big issue can be feeling like you have this huge task, this mountain in front of you. And if you only focus on where you are at the beginning or on that day and where you have to get to, it can feel overwhelming. It can be like, I will never be able to get there. And as a result, I feel zapped of energy. So setting small, doable, realistic goals can be really helpful to get you some momentum. So maybe if you're really struggling, maybe you're having a really tough time sticking to your study schedule or sticking to your time schedule, set like the easiest goal you can possibly think of. Like some days for me, when I'm really having a hard time, my goal is just to open the thing that I've been putting off, that I don't want to do, that's stressing me out. I'm just going to open the document. I'm just going to open it. That's all that's my goal for today. I just want to open it, and I'll go beyond that usually, but then I reward myself if I do open it. So maybe you can have realistic, there's a few different ways to go at this. One is like break your study schedule down or your meta goals into smaller ones along the way so that you feel like you're achieving things as you go along. That should just be part of your baseline structuring of your thing. And then when you're really in it, you're feeling burned out, you're feeling crummy, you're feeling like you can't get the motivation to do anything, set the tiniest little tiny little baby goal. And then when you get it, give yourself a pat on the back or do whatever you decided you were going to do for yourself as a result of that. And then set another tiny little baby goal. And then, have that momentum help you get where you need to go. Oh my gosh, Miracle. I love that. I just saw that in the chat. How you have the little note card about the 5 reasons you're doing all this. That's so great to have that. You can even post that near your desk or something. Oh, what a great idea. Yeah. I see you guys talking about like challenges that you have with space and stuff right now. I totally get that. Um, And Jenny in the chat asked about space too. Did I change my study space often while studying for the Mcat, or did I study in the same spot? For me, I studied in the same spot. This was back when libraries were a thing. So I had this certain library I would go to, and it helped me to like compartmentalize a little. Like that's the place I go to do Mcat, and then I leave that place and I don't do Mcat. And I don't know how much it's possible, but to the degree you guys can with the people you live with, be honest about what you need. And think about all the times people say like they want to help you that are important to you, and they mean it. They want to help you. They can't take the test for you, but you can tell them things that you need that can help you. Don't be afraid to ask for them. People want to help, and just be thoughtful about what would actually be helpful for you, and then tell them that. Let me just think. I think I did burnout. Yeah, whoever asked about burnout with family responsibilities and financial responsibilities, it's a non-trad. One last thing I'll say, that I talked about setting boundaries and like using your no to get to your yes. The only other word of advice I would give on that is realize that sometimes you can't do everything well. And sometimes you have to be okay with that. Meaning that like, if you're going to do a great job on studying for the Mcat or whatever your main focus is at that time, you might not be able to be the best, I don't know, TA, or you might not be able to be the best friend or sister right at that time. Part of this, what you guys are doing, a lot of you with working and schooling and trying to do this and everything else you guys do, is keeping all these balls in the air, right? And we're all going to have to keep doing this as we go through our life. And the question that I ask myself a lot, that I encourage you to ask yourselves too, when you're trying to keep all the balls in the air and you only have 2 arms, which one can fall right now and have it not be the worst? And then maybe you give that one a little less of your time and attention right now. Does that mean you will always be a terrible sister, always not be the best at work, always, always be a little behind on your credit card payment? Or what, I'm just saying, like, you can't do everything perfectly. So right now you might have to decide to be a great MCAT studier and a so-so these other things. And then later, when MCAT is done, you can be a great this again. I know for a lot of us, we're like type A perfectionists. We want to be great at everything all the time. And sometimes we can't. And getting okay with that, I think, is really important. Maybe you try to do fewer things, or just recognize that you're not going to be the best at everything right now. You're going to be the best at the thing you need to be the best at right now. And you're going to keep everything else just kind of chugging along until you can come back to it. Oh yeah, no, I feel you on, Susanna, is that virtual backgrounds? I just discovered those, like virtual spaces. I think those are the coolest thing. They make them for Hogwarts and I want to do it. That's really cool. Thank you for that tip. And then Mandana, I totally feel you on the kids and the work and saying, yep, maybe you feel like you're not being the best mom right now. And I know that that's like such a terrible, like we all think that we're not the best moms and wives and everything, but trust yourself that you are putting that you know how to, that the juggling that you're doing, you know how to do, and you're going to do it well. Okay, cool. So I will now talk about, let's see. I'm just finishing up with the questions. Any strategies for finding Mcat study groups to connect with others in a similar position during remote education? Renee, that's a great question. I mean, here is one thing. I mean, you guys all have each other in chat. If somebody has said something in the chat that speaks to you, can you send them a direct message on this? I don't know if you can. I think you can send a chat message to a direct person. So first of all, there's this. And the fact that you guys are already here, shows that you're being like engaged with virtual communities. So I think continuing to going to stuff like this can be helpful. If you're actively in school, I mean, everything's over Zoom, so you can try to message people like that. You can try to find them on I really try to tell people to stay off of Student Doctor Network and Reddit because I feel like they're just they're basically liquid anxiety. Okay, so pre-med groups on Facebook are good. Okay, so that's another cool thing. And another thing, Renee, that you might do is talk to your advisor at your school. If there's other people, maybe they're like a year ahead of you that are similar and advisors usually have like mental ideas of, oh, this person reminds me of this person. They might be able to match you up with somebody in terms of like, oh, they're at the same level as you right now, or maybe even somebody a year ahead of you who might be able to give some good advice looking back. And then in your classes, you can try to, what's the worst that could happen if you said to somebody, hey, are you studying for the MCAT too? You want to like check in with each other once a week on how it's going? Maybe they say no. And then you feel dumb for like a second and then you move on. So, I think in the situations you're in, don't be scared to reach out. Continue putting yourself in situations where you have the opportunity to meet like-minded people like this and other webinars that you might go to. Use virtual community groups like the one Lewis pointed out in the chat. And then use your advisor and the network at your school that might be able to suggest, do some study matchmaking, if you will. Great question. Okay, cool. So somebody asked in the Q&A, if we're studying over the summer for about 3 months, how many hours per day would you say we should schedule in for studying? So if that's your only job for the day, like you're not working or anything like that, and you're doing a 3-month study schedule, I think, so 3 months. I think you could treat it like a job, like a 9 to 5 with an hour lunch break. So if you want to do, and that would be like putting you in a really good spot. Right off the bat, I wanted to say like 5 to 6 hours of study time, which when you factor in breaks and meals and stuff, I think you could do like 9 to 5. I actually think it might help you if you were doing that as your sole thing to kind of think about it as a 9 to 5 and be like, oh, I show up for work at 9, take an hour lunch break, and then I sign off at 5. That's what I would suggest for a 3-month time frame. And then somebody asked a question about whether I have any recs for single parents going down the path of med school. Do many schools have family housing or schools and childcare? Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think once you get on the interview trail, like when you're interviewing at different schools, definitely ask about the support systems they have. I can only speak, so I don't have children, but there is, I think there's only one person in my class I know of that has a child that lives with them, like that he's the primary caregiver for. And I know that our school at least makes a lot of accommodations and like offers a lot of support for students with children. So like there is a daycare. His kid is too young to go, but there is a daycare that they I don't know if you have to pay for it, but there's like an option to be affiliated with this daycare that's right on campus. And especially for students in the MD PhD programs, which are longer, that can be up to like 8-9 years. Having a child while being in medical school is not unusual. It's not the rarest thing in the world. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be ashamed to ask. Don't think that they're going to, think of you as like more of a liability to take on, because then they'll have to like pay for childcare or something as well. So yeah, bring it up in your interviews, ask about it. And it's another one of those things that shows how many skills you have and what strength and fortitude you must have to be able to raise a child while, getting to the point where you get a med school interview. That's something to be proud of and to highlight. So don't be afraid to ask about how they can support you during that. Awesome. And then how do I deal with being overwhelmed? That's a question in the Q&A. That is a great question. So I have developed my little things that work for me, but that came from a process of doing a lot of work. So what works for me might not work for somebody else. But for me, when I feel overwhelmed, my personal choices are I will do meditation. And I'm not like some great yogi. No way. But I can turn on that app that we were talking about, Insight Timer, or I can go to YouTube and look for 5-minute anxiety meditation. And doing a meditation with some breathing exercises helps me come back. Because for me, when I feel overwhelmed, the reason that I'm feeling overwhelmed is because I'm worrying about everything at once. Everything. The times I feel overwhelmed are the times that I'm letting every potential hypothetical worry in. Or I'm just choosing to worry about, I do 5 things, whatever, and I'm choosing to let the worries about all 5 of those in to my mental experience right now. So what I need to do in those situations is just come back to right here in this moment and stop proactively trying to find things to freak out about. Because even though there are all these terrible things that in my head that could happen, if I do some meditation and come back to my breath, just breathing, where am I right now? How are things right this moment? Then I realize through focusing on my breath and how my body feels at a given time that, okay, well, yes, next week I have that exam. And like, if I fail that exam, that might happen. But right now, how are things right? Well, right now I feel pretty comfortable. I have some lovely tea. I'm warm in my house. I talked to my mother a little bit ago and that made me feel really good. So right now things are okay. So for me, doing meditation, that helps me go from a situation where all the worries of the world are swirling around my head to I narrow my focus, and then I'm just me, just right here, right now, and everything just right here, right now is okay. That's my main mechanism. The other thing I do is to get outside because being in nature reminds me that the world is a lot bigger than the small, tiny box of worries that I've encased myself in. And that, living beings have been surviving and thriving on the planet for many more eons than I have ever been alive. So that helps me too. And then moving my body. So getting out of everything up here by focusing on some stuff down here helps me. Those are my tricks. Also calling a friend. I have some friends that I dial when things are a little too much. So I invite you to develop your own list of 3. And now that I know what those things are, I can quickly do them when I feel that way. But I didn't know what helped for a while, and I would just kind of sit in my stress. So explore what works for you so that you have a built system. So when you asked me that question, I knew exactly how to answer it because I know what to do when I feel like that, because I'm going to feel like that a lot in my life. So I encourage you to explore and build that for yourself as well. Awesome. All right. So I just want to end by telling you guys a little bit about Blueprints, Mcat stuff. So we are a company. We can help you prep. Right. I'm glad that I got to talk to you guys about all these mental health things, but I know that the work and the grind of prepping for the Mcat every day requires you not just to think about how to not be stressed, but also to do the work and doing the studying. So here at Blueprint, I think I've answered your question so far. We have a few different things that you can do. We have instructors that can tutor you one-on-one. That's like what I do with my students. In addition, we have live online review sessions 5 times a week. And we have basically something to meet any of your needs. The first thing I want to say is just that we have some stuff for free. Who doesn't like free? So if you are still trying to figure out what you want to use to study, or if you're using something already to study but want some extra free stuff, do this. We have a free Mcat practice bundle. So you get a half-length Mcat diagnostic, a full-length Mcat exam, some review videos, and a customizable planner, totally for free. So if you go to this website, just Blueprint Prep Mcat free resources, you can look that up. You can get that there. And then we also just launched this cool thing, which is like an online course. So it's a live online course. So it's like there's like a teacher, and like I think twice a week you log on and they'll like do some practice questions with you. So if you need a little more support than just working through things on your own, but you don't want a one-on-one tutor, this is like a nice in-between that you can do. And importantly, we're having a sale. That's what I needed to make sure to tell you, because again, who doesn't like free? Who doesn't like a sale? I'm just going to show you on the website real quick how you can see that. Here we go. Okay. So here is the Blueprint website, and there's supposed to be a different thing here. Maybe I'll go to Mcat. Maybe that'll do it. This is what I wanted to highlight for you guys. There's a sale. You can save $400 on that live online class thing I was talking about. It's like in between the personalization of a tutor and just going it alone online, and 10% on Mcat tutoring. So if you feel like you want a little extra support as you march through your pre-med journey, we're here for you. And you can contact us if you want to if you have any questions or if you want to purchase anything. Okay, so I feel like I have talked your ears off enough. Let me just quickly see. I think there's one more thing in the Q&A. Are the review sessions free and included with the section bank? That is a great question. So the review sessions, I believe, are, so I'm here in free resources now. Sorry, I'm moving things around so that I can see. Yeah, so in the free events and webinars, one of them is like the thing that we're doing tonight, but they also have some cars workshops that are free, Mcat online sessions. In terms of the office hours, I think that's part of the paid stuff. Let me just double check. And you can talk to one of the sales, like if you sign up, then there's somebody who contacts you, a student success expert actually, that tells you all about it. So for the online course, I think you get those free review hours. Actually, hold on, let me check one thing. I'm going back to the free bundle thing. Question of the day. Oh, okay. So I just checked the free bundle. It's just the public webinars and Q&A sessions. So if you didn't sign up for like the section bank stuff, then you would just have in the free resources, which I was just showing you before, these free events and webinars, which sometimes are content focused, like on cars. But in terms of those 5 times a week live office hours, that comes with the purchase, I think. Oh, cool. Thanks. And then Aurelio and Simmerjeet was saying that some of the stuff was really good. Cool. We like to think so. Cool. All right. So I think I have answered all your questions. If I missed a question in the chat, quickly put it in the Q&A so that I can not leave you hanging, because you guys are awesome about chatting in the chat. So I might have missed something here and then. But if nothing else comes in, then I think it's time to stop our study time for tonight and start our enjoyment time for tonight. Thank you guys so much for, first of all, just for coming, for realizing that this is an important topic. I give you guys such props for that right off the bat. For giving each other helpful hints and strategies in the chat. I love that support that you guys are giving each other. And then just for for listening and for being open. I could feel a lot of positive vibes coming from you guys. So thank you for that. It was a pleasure talking to you. Let me stop my share. I'll stay on for another like 2 minutes or so if anyone wants to. Oh, let me give you my my contact information. Hold on. I always forget if it's .com or .org on my .com. That's my email address. My first name is Julia. My last name is Wolf. That's my Blueprint email address. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. If it's something on the like the online course or something, I probably will put you in touch with one of the student success people because they know that stuff way better than me. But if you just want to drop me a line and say hi or anything like that, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you guys have, yes, Aurelio, I was a TA for biology. Did I have you? When I saw your name, I was like, I recognize that name, but I'm not going to say anything. Oh my gosh. Well, me and Aurelio are having a moment where we're realizing that we know each other. But yeah, so Aurelio, email me, drop me a line. I recognized I couldn't remember your last name, but when your first name popped up and you said Hunter, I was like, okay, this might be the Aurelio I know. Yeah, please email me. I'd love to hear how things are going for you. And it was really great meeting you, Milana, too. I hope to see you guys on the interview trail in the future. Keep it up. Good night. Thank you, guys. Bye for now. Bye. I guess email address for Hunter students. Did I put that in? I think I did. I have this. I don't. Yeah. This. Oh, got it. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you later. I'm going to end the meeting. Go enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.